Hello, fine arts students. Today's overall objective, I would like you to take a look at several examples of Antoine Watteau and Jean-Baptiste Chardin's artworks of the Rococo and natural style and be able to form an opinion about those. The Baroque period that we just ended showed us various interpretations of church ideals, screams for artistic individualism, planning and thought based on how the viewer actually sees the artwork and is a part of the artwork, and a conglomeration of different styles and ideals. So you see the continuation of some Northern Renaissance, some High Renaissance styles in Italian Baroque with Caravaggio and Bernini. Then the Baroque period spreads from Italy to the rest of Europe, and we see Spanish Baroque and French Baroque kind of taking on the same ideals that they see during the Baroque and Northern Renaissance periods and putting that in their own artworks. And then we see Vermeer, Rubens, and Rembrandt in Northern Europe, also taking several inspirations from several different places and combining them to make their own styles. And then we go on to Watteau and Chardin, and this is during the Age of Enlightenment, and you're going to see two completely separate styles, although in the same lesson. Watteau really took from Peter Paul Rubens, and also a little bit from Poussin. So Watteau is French, so he would see Poussin, and he took that landscape and then the combination of styles of Rubens with the expressive brushwork and things, and he put those together to create the fête galante style that we will see. And then something that completely boggles my mind, they put in Chardin, which is a complete and utter break from the Rococo time period. He looks more like a Vermeer, a Caravaggio, the same type of naturalist color schemes and the same attention to detail. So the big names we've seen so far and their little nicknames I like to give them. Bernini was the sculptor. Caravaggio was the legend. He's the one that everybody pretty much took cues from and ran with it. Velázquez was the pre-impressionist with his impasto painting techniques. Poussin was the landscapist. He's the one that put the little stories inside a very large landscape. Vermeer had the OCD details. He's very detail-oriented. Rembrandt was the magician of light. He took from Caravaggio and did his own thing, but with the impasto technique of painting. Rubens was the mystery. He's hard to tell whether he was a classicist or a naturalist like most of our other artists are. And then we move on to Watteau and Chardin. The Rococo time period really is an extension of the Baroque. So if it's not Rococo, it's not Baroque, right? So these are some things that you can hopefully use to help you remember the different artists. Now, to summarize everything, Rococo and naturalist art were very popular with the rich people during the Enlightenment. And this is whenever thinkers started to believe that logic could eliminate some sort of truth in life. And Rococo art is characterized by very delicate brushwork, very fanciful brushwork. Yeah, my way of saying it looks fluffy. It's so fluffy. And pastel color schemes. Watteau was the one, if you see an artwork that's a Rococo style, more likely than not, it's a Watteau. But there's a couple of others, but K-12 chose Watteau because he really does signify that whole style. He put the aristocracy in these fanciful settings doing fun things. So no wonder everybody liked him because it was showing these fancy people, but out doing fun things because, of course, they aren't all stuffy bougie types, right? They go out and do fun things. But then some people thought that that was a little bit too much. It was a little too fluffy. And Chardin really went back to that genre painting that we see from Vermeer with a little bit more Caravaggio color scheme involved, the sepia tones, and wanted to take things from everyday life that often taught moral values. But you'll see that his moral values aren't so much in the product, like his artwork itself. It's more of his process of creating his artworks was the moral value he was trying to instill. So new terms, you'll see it's fête gallant, literally gallant party, and this is where you have the fancy people doing fun things. And then naturalistic is where you take artworks and you try to make them as realistic as humanly possible, with no idealization, no perfection at all. And an old term that we're going to see coming back in Chardin's artwork is the pyramid configuration. You still have artworks using the triangle, the hidden triangle, to create harmony and stability. All right, so going into the course, and also I'm going to show you some other examples different in different web pages that'll give you more of a sense of these artists instead of just seeing one or two artworks. Of course, we are in 1.10 for the naturalist enlightenment, although Watteau's work, the Rococo style, is anything but naturalist. So I'm not really sure where this whole classification is coming from. But the artwork that they are focusing on is the pilgrimage to Cithra. And he actually did two separate versions of this. The other one I actually like better than this one. So I'll show you that in just a second. So, you had this time period where hard work and being able to logically work through things led you to some sort of truth, and being rich and going out and just having the world handed to you was not necessarily a good thing. So during this time period, you have the Rococo style come out. French royalty and aristocrats really liked this really ornate style of art, even though you had these Enlightenment thinkers out there spouting out about truth and logic and being a realist type of thing. So no wonder he was very popular, because during the time there was a lot of talk. Okay, so there actually is a second version, and they don't even show it to you. So let me go show you the second version now. It's actually in something called eBiblio, or Web Museum. You can pretty much search any artist, and it gives you several examples of their artwork. And here is the other example of the pilgrimage to Cithra. I actually like this one better than the one that they show you in the course content, and this is actually his first one. But you can see those pastels, you can see how he's using the landscape to create a scene or set for this play that is acting out. He was a big fan of the theater. You can see it in his artwork. So you see the fancy people doing fun things. You want to succeed with women. Usually it was about, flirting and that kind of thing. And here's the example of the pilgrimage of Cithra that you actually see in the course content. Now, these same aristocrats that liked the version of them doing fun things also were going out and commissioning these very realistic type of artworks. So we have Chardin, which is completely opposite of Watteau. He did genre paintings with so much realism. Nothing's idealized or anything like that. It's just a real story. Okay? And in the artworks, you'll actually see that, yes, Chardin did do a lot of still lifes that were just very simple household objects, like a jar of olives or a setup of food that was possibly going to be cooked up for that day. And they do go into moral values and the fact that he wanted to create this sense of tranquility in order to have the image itself kind of speak for itself. Naturalists did try to do these moral values within their artworks, but if you look at some of the other examples of Chardin's work. Go back to Webb Museum here. Then what you're going to see is he took a long time to create his artworks, and he was very, very strict about his style and how he built up the colors and the layers that he was creating. So his moral values actually were in the process of creating his artworks. He spent so much time, and he was so well known. He did only 4 paintings a year. That's how much time he really spent on his artworks. So his moral values was more of hard work and determination, and not being all frilly and going out and flirting with everybody like Watteau was, more so than the final art piece itself. Okay, so although the one that you see in the course content does show a strict moral value of saying grace before meals, the majority of his artworks aren't so much of a moral value as the actual process of creating them itself. Okay, so coming back to the lesson, what I want you to think about, here's another example of Chardin's work. Okay, do you agree with Chardin? Does the Rococo style seem artificial to you, and why? Which do you prefer, the realism of Chardin or the fun and frivolousness of Watteau? I want you to think about those things there and be able to support